Turnpike. So again, thank you all for making that effort and your diligence to be here. I appreciate it so much. It is my pleasure to be here on behalf of Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings to be the staff lead for the Citizen Safety Task Force, and I've had such an extreme pleasure to work with each of you all. I couldn't be more thankful to have such a wonderful group of caring and devoted residents for this issue of addressing gun violence and violent crime in our community. So it is now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Jerry L. Demings, Orange County Mayor.
All right. Good morning to all of you. Thank you, Carol. Carol Burkett does a wonderful job in helping to facilitate and coordinate these meetings. I have to give some acknowledgments to our team from Orange TV. We're very fortunate as a county to be one of few counties in Florida that has its own television station that allows us to share publicly the work that we're doing here within Orange County. And so to the team of individuals who are facilitating this from Orange TV, thank you for the work that you're doing. As we move forward with our Orange County Citizen Safety Task Force, I want to also say thank you to all of you who have been doing the work, who have been volunteering your time for this effort. The work is meaningful to our citizens here. I will look forward to the recommendations that you will ultimately make to the Board of County Commission. It will be timely because we're moving into that phase where we will be finalizing our budget for the upcoming fiscal year in 2024. The current fiscal year ends September the 30th, and the new fiscal year begins October 1st. But in the process, this summer we will be having our budget workshops. We will then have our public hearings towards the first part of September. Pursuant to that, there will be some discussion about how we fund various programs that we have within the county, and the feedback that you will give that will come out of the Citizen Safety Task Force will be part of the dialogue that we will have. In terms of the recommendations, you will have short-term, long-term recommendations, and from our prior recommendations, we reported out, as you know, on whether or not we had achieved some of the goals that were established, and some are works in progress. Some will be modified based upon your recommendations or amended. In some regard, there may be some new ones. There's one area of particular note that I saw and read, and it is regarding our regulatory authority as a county over gun control, gun rights, violent crime, and gun prevention. There are some preemptions under state law that preempts local governments from enacting any type of legislation, etc., that is contrary to the state law in regards to gun control and those related issues. In fact, the legislation includes penalties for local elected officials who may violate the state's law. So that is an area that, in looking at preliminary recommendations, I am going to ask the county attorney's office to make certain that any recommendations that come forward do not run afoul of the current state law here within Florida because of that preemption that exists. Many of you already know that in terms of advocacy, if it's outright advocacy for any type of political position on legislation, there are some prohibitions there as well. But those of us who serve in elected office, we certainly can advocate. But our staff, that's a different story. So we have to make certain that whatever we do, it is clean and kept separate in terms of the advocacy. I do recognize my colleague here, Commissioner Michael Scott, has joined us. He has attended several of these meetings. I'm not sure if we have any other elected officials here or not. But as we move forward this morning, I look forward to your discussions. I will be here for a portion of the meeting today, and then I have another obligation at the airport, another function that I'll be leaving for perhaps before you will conclude your meeting today. And to our co-chairs, let me just say once again, thank you for the work that you're doing, your leadership. I know that we're going to leave the work to be done in good hands with Pastor Doggett and Dr. Coffin. They will carry on in my absence. And I'm going to turn it over to them at this time so that we can formally begin our meeting.
This morning, instead of a traditional invocation, I'm going to invite you to share in a reflection with me. I came across a poem that was written just after the war broke out in the Ukraine. And I think that while it's talking about war at a grander scale, what we're talking about in the subcommittees and in the larger task force is a form of war, and I think much of this is applicable. And so I'd like to share this poem, which is called "In the Face of War, I'm So Small, Yet Love is Big." And it's slightly adapted for our purposes here. It's written by a man named John Rodell. I can't make the world be peaceful. I can't stall tanks from roaring down roads. I can't prevent children from having to hide in bunkers. I can't convince the news media to stop turning war into a video game. I can't silence the sound of bombs tearing neighborhoods apart. I can't turn a guided missile into a bouquet of flowers. I can't make a warmonger have an ounce of empathy. I can't convince ambassadors to quit playing truth or dare. I can't deflect the sniper's bullet from turning a wife into a widow. I can't stave off a country being reduced to ash and rubble. I can't do any of that. The only thing I can do is love the next person I encounter without any conditions or strings. To love my neighbor so fearlessly that it starts a ripple that stretches from one horizon to the next. I can't force peace on the world, but I can become a force of peace in the world. Because sometimes all it takes is a single lit candle in the darkness to start a movement. Let us be candles of comfort in this world. Let us burn with peace. I thought that was appropriate for our group today. Thank you.
I invite you now to stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we would like to have all the members who are present, as well as the county liaisons, to introduce themselves, and we'll start over here at my right.
Good morning. Arnie Amaros, Orange County Representative, District 4.
Good morning. I'm Jim Lee. I'll be sitting in for Barb Bergen on Central Florida Crime Line.
Good morning. I'm Charles Brown, the Senior Vice President of Bridges International.
Good morning. Laddie Calloway on behalf of Greater Footsteps Foundation.
Good morning. Lisa Coppy, Orange County Public Schools.
Good morning. Linda Coffin, Moms Demand Action.
Good morning. Lisa Early, City of Orlando.
Good morning. Dr. Jonathan Cox, University of Central Florida.
Good morning. Sandra Fatmi Hall, representing Pine Hills Community Council.
Morning, everyone. Adam Hartnett with Poverty Solutions Group in Circle, Central Florida.
Good
Good morning, Barbara Lanning from the League of Women Voters of Orange County.
Good morning, Sheriff John Mina, Orange County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning, Miles Moran Jr. Let your voice be heard.
Good morning, Nancy Ash, University professor.
Good morning, Captain Tanisha Bronskill, Orlando Police Department for Chief Smith.
Good morning, Bill Vos, retired Chief Assistant State Attorney, Ninth Circuit.
Good morning, Mark Wickstrom, Chief Assistant State Attorney for the Ninth Circuit, here on behalf of State Attorney Monique Worrell.
Good morning, Juanita Beeson, Liaison to the Prosecution Subcommittee.
Good morning, Anthony Watts, Deputy Chief, Liaison to the Enforcement Subcommittee.
Good morning, Angela Chastain, Staff Liaison to the Prevention Subcommittee.
Good morning, Tracy Salem, Deputy Director, Community and Family Services, Intervention Subcommittee Liaison.
Hello, everyone. I'm Van Thomas, Director, Community and Family Services, Orange County.
Good morning, Carol Burkett, Deputy Chief of Staff to Orange County Mayor Jerry Demings and Staff Lead to the Citizen Safety Task Force.
And I would ask, do we have any who are watching on WebEx?
Thank you, Pastor Coffin. We do have Subhash Katil that is on WebEx joining us.
Thank you very much. And thank all of you for being here today.
Everyone has received a draft copy of our May 26th task force meeting, and we're ready now to entertain a motion that these minutes be accepted. Do we have a motion?
Could I make a amendment to it? I've just checked my notes. I was here. I think what happened is I didn't sign my name when I came in the door. So Bill Vos was here.
Very good.
Didn't want anybody to let me out here.
Yes. Do we have a motion that these minutes be accepted with that amendment?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor, aye. Opposed, same sign. It's carried.
At this time, we have some community comments. And so I'd first of all like to ask Commissioner Mike Scott to come to the microphone, and then Jesse Board. And so the amount of time allotted for the comment is 3 minutes. And if you were wanting to make a comment but haven't yet filled out the form to do so, please see Ms. Carol Burkett over here and make sure that you get on the list.
Good morning, everyone. I want to just take a moment and just say thank you for all the work you guys have done in this task force and obviously in the community. Many of you are not paid to be here, yet you're here every day, day in and day out in the task force committees, running emails, making phone calls to make this happen. So thank you for that. When I look at Orange County government, I look at us as a backbone agency. And when I think about what backbone agencies do, they support smaller agencies. They support programs that may not have someone that believe in them. They support winners when no one knows or believes that an organization or an individual may be a winner. That is similar to my story. Living here my entire life, I think about the things that I experienced as a kid. Junior Magic at the Pine Hills Boys and Girls Club, going to the Southwest Boys and Girls Club. Now those names have changed. The YMCA on Hastings, and I think the Pine Hills Community Center used to be a YMCA, if I remember correctly. And all those things, I think, kind of shaped my trajectory. But my pathway into this work, and when I say this work, I'm talking about like mentoring and serving families, started with the Public Defender's Office as a volunteer. That's how I met many of the people sitting on the left side of the room, Carol Burkett, Dr. Thomas, Miss Angela, Chief Watts, Miss Beeson, and also Miss Rump. And so as I progressed, I started volunteering with the school district, Great Oaks Village, because it was a passion of mine and it was a calling on my life that I didn't know. I say all that to say this. I would love to see some iteration of this task force hopefully become an advisory board, hint, hint, Mayor. But also to grow the work that we know is being done by so many other organizations, not just the nonprofits, but our constitutional partners. As I said, I started with the public defender as a volunteer to get into mentoring, and that's 19 years later I'm here. But you look at, the state attorney trying different engagement methods that you haven't seen before. You look at the sheriff's office and their grants program over the 30 years. Now they're at 24 organizations. And so for me, I think it's not only incumbent upon us as a governmental entity to invest in nonprofits, but also to foster the creation of other like programs in the organizations that don't have them and invest in the ones that do. And so for me, I want to see some type of engagement with the property appraiser, the tax collector, because it's not a law enforcement problem, it's not a faith-based problem, it's a community problem that's going to require all of us in different ways. And while I think I'm an pretty decent mentor, I know I'm not the solution for every kid. And we have to know that investing in things that may not look like they're viable, but giving them the opportunity to believe in them. And so I just wanted to say thank you for allowing me to speak, and thank you guys for the work. I appreciate you, and thank you, chairs, members.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Scott. And now Jesse Boyd.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse Boyd. I am director and co-founder of Boyd Faith, Hope, and Love Ministries. We are a prison ministry, 503c nonprofit that serve in the state prisons in Florida. We are a faith-based entity. We believe a faith-based approach to re-entry is the best. I am a returning citizen myself. I believe that faith-based foundation is what helps us ex-offenders to come home and stay grounded. So I'm saying this to speak from that place, from the ex-offender place in this situation. I believe that to break the crimes, to break the cycle of crimes and violence in this city, we must address poverty first, and our underserved communities, and acknowledge that inadequate reentry services directly impact crimes and violence. Naturally, about 98% of people sentenced into prisons or jails will return to the same community, because that's the only place in hope of surviving. About 2/3 of these individuals are rearrested within 3 years, some committing crimes of violence or the same crimes that got them into prison in the first place. I feel we have to see if these crimes of violence are connected directly with ex-offenders, and see how we could make a way to help ex-offenders to come out of these invisible handcuffs that they come into when they come home. The United States accounts for 5% of the world's population, but house 25% of the world's prison population. It costs taxpayers $18,000 per year to house one adult in the Florida Department of Corrections, $48,000 per year in a local jail, and $81,000 per year to place one youth in the Department of Juvenile Justice facility. People with criminal histories face various obstacles to reintegrating into society, such as finding employment, secure and good housing, getting substance abuse treatment, and mental health treatment. We need to look into the services that we do have, and then find a necessary way to bridge them to connect these resources to our returning citizens. Our local county government, I'm suggesting this, should coordinate a reentry task force or a subcommittee to connect with this subcommittee to focus strictly on reentry. And thank you for allowing me to have my time to speak. I see I'm beeping, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Want to just say a word of thanks to all of the task force members for the time commitment that you've made. We've had 4 task force meetings, 16 subcommittee meetings, 2 public forums, and you have dedicated your time and your sweat equity to this most important subject. And we want to say thank you. On today, we're going to be hearing from our subcommittees, and this is, in fact, the meat of the work, where we're going to hear the recommendations that have been made by our subcommittees. Each one of the persons who will be presenting for our subcommittees, we're asking you to take approximately 10 to 12 minutes with your report. Of course, a vote will be taken today later after we've heard all of the reports and have had an opportunity to have discussion on the recommendations that are being made. First, we're going to hear today from Dr. Jonathan Cox. He represents the prosecution subcommittee. After Dr. Cox, we will hear from Lisa Early, the chair of the prevention subcommittee. And then we will go to Tracy Salem, who will be representing the intervention subcommittee. Then finally, the committee that was chaired by Judge Dawson. He's not here on today. He can't attend, but Nancy Ash will be presenting for the enforcement subcommittee. I want to thank all of our chairs and those who are representing the subcommittees for being willing today to step forward to the microphone and make your presentations. Again, 10 to 12 minutes is the ballpark we're asking for, and then there will be plenty of opportunity later to discuss these recommendations. Dr. Cox, you are recognized.
Before we go to Dr. Cox, I just wanted to make a recognition as well. Commissioner Gomez Cordero just arrived, and we're in her district here, so she is very, very supportive of this role as well. Sorry.
No problem. Of course, Mayor. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for the response. I appreciate it. So again, my name is Dr. Jonathan Cox. I'm an assistant professor of sociology at the University of Central Florida, as well as the vice president for the Center for Policy Analysis and Research at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. I'm going to have the pleasure of serving as the chair for the prosecution subcommittee. Not working. Technical difficulties, 1 second. Yeah. Thank you. All right. Ooh, okay, it seems to be working. There we go. All right. So our committee, the prosecution subcommittee, was charged with providing recommendations towards enhancing the prosecution of gun violence and violent crimes, as well as finding ways to reduce violent crimes through alternative prosecutorial avenues. And as a committee, we met 3 times outside of the larger task force community meetings and heard presentations by guest speakers, community members, task force members, and county staff regarding the Geographic Stewards Program, the Adult Civil Citations Program, the Blueprint for Ending Gun Violence, and Orange County Corrections Reentry Programs. And through our ongoing meetings, the prosecution subcommittee believes that we have several important recommendations to present towards our committee goals. All right, so the first 2 recommendations that we have are related to recommendations that came out of the committee. Thank you. That came out of the committee during the last cycle of this task force. And so the first is the Geographic Stewards Program. Now, this recommendation involves the implementation of a community prosecution model where prosecutors partner with local community members and law enforcement to help interrupt the cycle of violence. And we really wanted to note here that while this is an important recommendation, it's a very useful tool, a general lack of funding and limited staffing somewhat inhibited the progression of this particular recommendation. Our second recommendation that came out of this committee during the last cycle of this task force is implementing a civil citation diversion program. We felt that this recommendation overall had really great benefits, and thus we proposed several enhancements to the program in order to help improve both its effectiveness and its usage with different organizations. And so what we propose as short-term actions regarding this recommendation is one, we recommend that law enforcement agencies make the issuance of civil citations mandatory for eligible offenses and establish processes requiring officers to obtain approval for not using a civil citation in a given instance. Second, we recommend that law enforcement agencies publish statistics showing the number of citations that are issued out of their various units. And we also recommend that the state attorney's office or law enforcement agencies publish statistics showing the number of instances in which citations could have been issued. We also recommend, with regards to this, that the state attorney's office develop public service announcements for the general public to help inform them of this program that they can use, so that they may be able to request this option if they find themselves in the circumstance where they might need to use it, as well as to inform the public that this program is not intended to represent a soft approach on crime. Rather, it really helps to allow law enforcement to focus on more significant crimes. And finally, with regards to this, we recommend that law enforcement introduce the program to new recruits during their onboarding training, right? This will, altogether, these additional recommendations that we have for the civil citations program will enhance the ways in which this program is used, increase its usage across the board in different departments, and again, just make it more available to the public in general. Now, our third recommendation, which was a new one out of our committee, was that we wanted to identify, we recommend the identification of a legislative advocate who will make recommendations for legislation that will help create protections for witnesses and neighboring persons to facilitate their willingness to share information, right? And so a part of this, or a part of successful prosecution of violent crimes, it really involves input and support from local community members as well as testimony from witnesses. And so we really wanted to emphasize the need to help protect these individuals so that we can help build that relationship between law enforcement and community members in order to solve these crimes. A specific recommendation with regards to this is also to increase restrictive parameters around the sharing of information regarding witnesses, again, towards the goal of protecting witnesses so that they feel more forthcoming with information and giving that on to help with cases against violent offenders. Our fourth recommendation is also new, is that the state attorney's office just issues a statement of affirmation and commitment to prosecuting gun violence cases to the fullest extent. We believe that this will help send a really positive message to the community. Again, that many of our recommendations are not to represent a softer approach on crime, but to help to eliminate, some of the prosecution for some things, right, that are lower level that may lead to higher level offenses. But again, also to really signify that we are about prosecuting gun violence and other violent crimes to the fullest extent of the law. A fifth recommendation that we have is to increase street cameras universally throughout Orange County. Oftentimes people would like to see the increase of street cameras and other ways of helping to identify criminals and violent offenders just in targeted areas, but we wanted to expand beyond that, right? We want to make sure that we're not simply targeting areas which could lead to, again, more negative interactions with various communities, but also expand that usage across Orange County and then let people know that this is something that's going to be happening everywhere, right? And that has a larger impact on crime and law enforcement's ability to arrest people, to find out what's happening, and then for a prosecution to happen. Now, our final recommendation that came out of our committee is really to help with the crime survey that's done every year, but towards the suggestion that we got before to help to capture some information with regards to prosecution specifically. And so we suggested a few questions that could be added to the community crime survey. Again, just want to emphasize that these are merely suggestions, that we think that somebody could kind of take these and craft them in the best ways to get the best information. But questions like, if you have perpetrated a crime of gun violence, what would have prevented you from committing that crime? Have you had communication with prosecuting authorities in the past year? If so, were you a victim or were you a witness? And then finally, do you know how the prosecution system works? Or again, some similar type of question to assess community familiarity with prosecution practices and processes. Again, these are the complete recommendations of our subcommittee. We really believe that these will help continue to do a lot of great work in the community with regards to prosecution. We know that this is it's the unfortunate aspect of what needs to happen with regards to violent crime, but also one of those things that is really significant and necessary. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Cox. We're ready now to hear from Tracy Salem, representing the Enforcement Subcommittee.
Dr. Doggett, we're on prevention next.
Oh, we're on prevention next?
Sorry.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm sorry. Lisa Early. My fault.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. I first want to thank Ms. Angela Chestang for being our liaison, being there all the time, always being prepared, and really giving the kind of support that we needed as a committee. Thank you so much. And please thank Ms. Daisy Townsend as well, who was there taking all the minutes and handling all the logistics. So appreciate that. And also a thank you to Moms Demand Action. I just have to say this, even in the when the committee met back in the day several years ago, they always had people there. They're volunteers. They came out. This is their passion, what they care about. And I just want to thank the organization for all they do. Okay. So let me use the clicker here. Prevention. Okay, these are members of our committee. Most of them are here. I want to thank the members of our committee who came, who gave their input, who really have passion for this work. Thank you for all that you did. So our committee decided to focus mainly on youth between the ages of 13 and 25 residing in the zip codes that where the incidence of violent crime is the highest. We held 5 meetings, and our members participated in the community meetings as well. We had several presentations from guest speakers, community stakeholders, and county staff. A presentation from Prevent Gun Violence Florida, one from the Orange County Public Information Officer from the Department of Community and Family Services. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. One from the Division Manager for Children, Youth, and Families for the City of Orlando. Also a presentation from Florida Rights Restoration Coalition and Live Free Campaign, which is a national organization. So when the task force first met 2 years ago, our committee had come up with 7 overall recommendations. So when we first began at our first meeting, Ms. Chastain graciously went over all of those recommendations and what the county had done during that 2-year period. And it was really quite remarkable. It was a very detailed analysis of all of the work that had been done. And we were really pretty, I think, impressed by the work that the county has put in to begin to implement these recommendations. So we decided to narrow down our focus, since the time was limited, to narrow down our focus to those recommendations that we wanted to amend or change. And there were 3 recommendations that we focused on. One of them was our recommendation number 2, which is entitled Expand/Enhance Access to Effective Youth and Parenting Mental and Behavioral Health Programs. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The second recommendation that we looked at and decided to amend was reducing access to illegal firearms, and obviously that conversation was founded on the fact that the state has issued new statutes since the time of the original task force meetings. And then the last recommendation that we looked at was to communicate key issues and programs to the community. And a lot of this had to do with Ms. Chastain's presentation and all of the things that the county has been doing, and a sense that, wow, we want the broader community to know more about all this stuff. So with regard to recommendation number 2, we looked at 3 particular components of that recommendation. It was a very broad recommendation in the original task force meeting. The first one we looked at was a recommendation to fund programs operated by credible messengers in the target neighborhoods. Credible messengers are defined herein as organizations, including small-scale and individuals who have long-standing, trusted relationships with at-promise youth in the target zip codes and a legacy of effectively encouraging and supporting youth on the path to successful adulthood. So Ms. Chastain talked about the investments that have been made in the Credible Messenger program since this recommendation was originally made 2 years ago. And our recommendation as a task force was that the county should review the impact of the program and determine if additional funding is needed to achieve program goals. And I think the sense was that it's doing really good prevention work on the ground in the neighborhoods that we want to focus on, and we're not sure that they're given enough money and investment to really get the job done. And so if it's being effective, the county should consider allocating even more funding to the program. The second part of that recommendation was to look at an earlier recommendation. What you see up on the screen, the parts that are underlined are added language that we have amended our previous recommendations to add the language that is underlined here. So it says allocate substantial funding based upon budget recommendations of experts in the field to implement research-based models in the target zip codes proven to prevent violent crime, including the following list of practices. And so this is talks about the CVI model. CVI stands for Community Violence Intervention, which is different from the Credible Messenger program. So Credible Messengers is really a primary prevention program in neighborhoods where crime is high, children struggle with a lot of issues, and it provides all kinds of preventative kind of programming, engaging youth in positive activities, connecting them with mentors, whereas CVI is a very, very targeted effort to focus just on a small population of individuals who are the most likely people to shoot someone or be shot. The City of Orlando has now piloted that initiative starting last November and currently has enrolled 38 people. And the people who work with them, they're called Neighborhood Change Associates, provide intensive wraparound support to those 38 individuals. They meet with them at least 3 times a day. They develop life maps with them. And then there are also contracted mental health providers, housing providers, job providers that work strictly with those 38 people to pivot them away from that life of crime. The whole initiative is being evaluated by the University of California at Berkeley. So we had a presentation from them about it. And so the recommendation was to make a more robust recommendation in this space. So to partner with municipalities within Orange County, so not just City of Orlando, but all of Orange County, to partner with municipalities to implement evidence-based community violence intervention models in targeted county neighborhoods experiencing high incidences of gun violence, ensure that the CVI model identifies the most lethal individuals at the center of gun violence and provides them with long-term wraparound mentoring and supportive relationships and wraparound services, including housing, employment, mental health counseling, and legal assistance until the individuals have fully pivoted away from a life of violence and are firmly set in a productive, positive, crime-free lifestyle. So that was basically the recommendation, to look at this model and to implement it and to make sure that sufficient funding is provided to implement it effectively. The next recommendation was to look at implementing models that identify small, defined geographic areas and invest in cradle-to-career programs. So this was in our original recommendations as well, and where we had a presentation from somebody who really wants this to be expanded into some county neighborhoods. So the committee agreed with that and decided to bolster our recommendation in that space. So those were the changes that we recommended to make to our second recommendation regarding access to youth and parenting, mental health and behavioral health programs. So then we talked about recommendation number 5, create and implement a blueprint for local